So, all right. So welcome everybody to our webinar today on tools, tips, and browser tricks. My name is Blaine Coldiron. I'm a software solutions architect for Ellipse Solutions. I've been working with Dynamics on and off, well, on for about 8 years. I've been working for Ellipse for the past couple of years, focused on D365 sales, marketing, customer engagement applications. A little bit about Ellipse Solutions. We've been a Microsoft consultant organization for 26 years. 15 years of that's been focused on Dynamics, and we like to say we have 2 former customers in a world where 75% of ERP implementation projects fail. Only 2 of our customers are no longer clients, so that's a pretty good track record. I like to think we have that good a track record on our CRM side too. So we try to do the best we can with our implementations so we can move forward and make them better all the time. A little bit about something supporting your systems. If you need help supporting your ERP or your customer engagement application, we have several options available to you. We have a help desk support, which we deliver superior support for your Dynamics implementations. We're very quick to respond. Usually we can come up with a resolution or at least help you come up with mitigation or resolution fairly quickly. And we have other coaching opportunities with our Dynamics Coach live virtual sessions of on-hands, instructor-led, certified training courses. So that's another learning opportunity if you're trying to develop your skills in Dynamics. So lots of options there. If you want to reach out, you can go to our website, and there's links provided on the slide. And I'm sure Ryan would be happy to put these links in the chat or send you the links in email if you want to research those more on our website. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about tools, tips, and browser tricks. And there's really no tricks, but these are all kind of helpful things that I've used over the past couple years to help me do administrative tasks or development tasks or troubleshooting tasks. And so I just wanted to share those with other people, because I know when you're starting to work with a dynamic system, a lot of times you don't know exactly where to go or how to go about something. And so I find this would have been helpful for me several years ago. So I hope it's helpful for you. We're going to break this down and talk about some tools that I use, some of the tools in the XRM toolbox, if you're familiar with the XRM toolbox. If not, well, you will be after this somewhat. And the metadata browser, just kind of how to use that or what that's about, and a couple of different options on using the metadata browser. And then some of the newer tools or some of the new features in the Power Platform, make.powerapps.com portal. So we'll look at a couple of options there. And then I'll share some tips with you, some tips on managing solutions and development that I find helpful if you're trying to start your solution or your ALM lifecycle management for your Dynamics. I think this will help you. And finally, we'll close out with some browser extensions that I use quite frequently, almost daily, to help me troubleshoot things and fix issues that I find in Dynamics 365. So if we'll get started, unless there's any questions or anyone's got anything they want to bring up. Hey. Okay, so tools. some of the tools that I like to use, like I mentioned, I use the XRM toolbox a lot. And what you'll find is if you haven't used the XRM toolbox, you can download it. I think if you go to Google and you type XRM toolbox, it'll send you right to the website where you can download the toolbox. It's a client-side application, so it's installed on your machine. And as you can see, you know, there are a ton of tools in the toolbox. I can't say I've used them all. I probably can say I haven't used most of them. But there's a tool just about for anything that you need to do. And usually what it is are things that you could probably do in the application or in the admin area or in the customizations area, but it's just a lot harder, and these tools trying to simplify that job. And so I think the developer of these tools have done a really good job in trying to make those things less painful. So I've just picked out a few of my favorites that I tend to use a lot, and one of them is called Attribute Value Updater. And so this is a tool that you would use if someone comes to you and says, I want you to go set, this set of accounts, the email option to do not email or allow email or something like that. So they're looking to mass update a value on a particular table or entity. So if you open the tool, you'll notice here, I've got all my tables listed here, and so you can pick which one that you want to update, and it's going to give you all of the kind of the fields that you can change on the values on. So like I said, if you are looking to update the do not allow emails field, you can come over here, you can type your set this to true. And now if you update your attribute, this tool is going to run and it's going to update that value for you. And I think I can show this is the environment that I was connected to. One thing about the toolbox is you have to create a connection to the environment that you're working with, obviously, and each tool that you launch, it will ask you to connect to that environment. Here I've already got a view set up with that here. So you'll see it's set all of those to do not allow, which true being on the do not allow email would be do not allow, I believe. I always get that backwards, but anyway, you can see that it'll mass update that value for you. So that's really a quick way to just go and update a set of records. You can filter, obviously, if you have some sort of a fetch or you've created a filter of a set of records that you only want to focus on. You would put that part of the fetch filter right here. And if you're familiar with fetch, then you know what I'm talking about. It's just a little filter clause, XML clause, and that will then only make sure that you update the records that you're looking to update, not all of them. So that's the attribute value updater. This is a useful tool. Another tool that I like to use, it kind of does the same thing, but in a different way, is called bulk data updater. Bulk data updater, I think I'm going to have to reopen this. I think sometimes this. I'll blame that on my machine and not the toolbox, because I probably haven't run a update or something in installation. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so the other tool that kind of works the same in a similar fashion is called bulk data updater. And bulk data updater, once this launches, there it is. And see, this is the connection I was talking about. When you open a tool, it's going to ask you what environment you want to connect to. I've already set up some connections here, so it will connect you to the environment. And so bulk data updater works kind of the same way, except for you can open a view. So if you've already created a view like I have in your system, you can use that particular view. So maybe it has exactly the rows and the row that you want to update in it. So you can pick a view from your list of tables. And so my view was called active accounts with email option. And it's really just, again, it's a fetch statement. So here's my view, and here's the column that we updated to true last time. So the way this works is kind of the same way. You go over here to your left and you pick the field that you want to update. You pick the value that you want to set it to. So we will set it to change it this time. So you've got that here. And then the nice thing, the difference with this tool is you can create batch sizes. So I can batch it up. And so this will be very valuable if you're updating a large amount of records. So we're saying like 10,000 or 20,000 or even 50,000 records. You would want to batch that up to to not create as much overhead on your environment, hopefully. And it would just run better. So that's the difference between this and the attribute value updater. The other one's just kind of run everything in one shot. So here, if you select a batch size, it will say, it'll run through that batch size and update your records. And then once it's done, it'll refresh your view here and you can see the values have changed. So it works a little bit different, but really it accomplishes the same thing, same type of situation. Another tool that I find very useful is when you're looking at security roles and you're trying to compare security roles and you're trying to figure out what role has what, or you want to see what the differences are between a couple of roles. This CRM security role comparer, and there's a few tools that do this. This one's one of my favorites. We have a lot of roles. You can pick a couple of roles. So like if I wanted to compare salesperson to, let's say, marketing, field service, resource, something like that. You pick the roles you want to compare, you hit compare. And what it will do is it will show you in this nice format the roles side by side on the object, and you can see exactly what the differences are between, and of course it could be two roles, it could be however many roles you want to compare. And here you can change, you can change the different parts of the security model to see the different areas. So this is a very useful tool when I'm trying to figure out what the differences between some of my roles are. So that's a nice one too. Another thing you will probably encounter at some point is someone asking you what a record count is for a particular table, or how many of these records do we have. And what you found is that in Dynamics you get that 5,000 plus because that's the limit it's going to show you is that you have over 5,000 records. And so you actually need to count. Maybe this is for integration that you're planning or something like that. But this fast record counter is another tool to get counts on your tables. And there's another tool I'll show you later. It's a browser extension that does the same thing. But this one's pretty nice for getting your counts on a bunch of different things. So you can go and pick all of the different records that you want counts on, and then you would just hit the count button and it will then show you the count on each of the things you selected. So that's a good way to get your record counts for your tables. So that's another one that I've used quite a bit. I go between this and the other one I'll show you. It's a browser extension. And then we talked this metadata browser. So when you're trying to look at the metadata for your system, the metadata browser comes in handy. I think sometimes when you get you get security errors, it'll give you the, the object type code, and it'll say, this object type, can't, doesn't have read access to, this object type. You can come in the metadata browser and figure out what it's talking about. Because obviously you don't have the object types memorized, at least I don't. So this also gives you all of the other metadata for, the tables. So there's another, I'm going to show you another version of this. That's, again, it's a browser extension that I like a lot better. I just think it's a more friendlier format to use because, this doesn't allow you to really filter. I could export it to Excel and then maybe filter it there and do some things like that. But this is one that I've used for years in the toolbox, and now there's a browser extension that does it. So I kind of prefer that. And so I'll show you that a little bit later. And finally, another tool in the toolbox, I think everyone uses this one, is the ribbon workbench. So when you need to make a change to the ribbon command bar, this has really been the traditional way you do that. You need to create a solution, of course, and in the solution you can only put the entity that you want to work with. And what I mean is only put the entity. You can't put like your forms and your fields and everything. All you do is add the entity, and then you can work with it in the ribbon workbench. And so this is a tool that Scott developed, and it's been used for years to work with the ribbon bar and create custom commands, custom buttons. So this is the tool to do that, but I'm going to show you another way today that you can now do it through Power Platform, and it's a lot better. Now you still will need the ribbon workbench because you can't do everything, through Power Platform yet, unfortunately, but this will still be needed for certain things. But this is traditionally where you would go create your button. And then you would add your command and your JavaScript and maybe a hide action or a display rule. This is where you would have done that. One thing I will say, if you're using the ribbon workbench, always do a backup, make a backup of your environment before you start messing around with the ribbons. If you don't know how to do a backup, we can ask, that can be a question at the end, and I can show you it's pretty easy, and especially in the Power Platform now, to do backup. So I would recommend that, highly recommend that if you're going to be messing around with your ribbon bars. So that's the ribbon workbench. That's another one that you'll probably use a lot. But again, there's tons of tools in the toolbox. A lot of them do the same thing, just in different ways. Some of them are hard to figure out how to use, and so those are the ones that I tend to not go back to. So these are some of the ones that I felt are pretty easy to use, and they're pretty useful functionality wise. Okay, so that's some of the tools that I use in the toolbox. I said I was going to show you another way to edit the ribbon command and get record count, so I'll do that. So in the Power Platform, well, now you have the ability to edit the command bars in the Power Platform. So if you're in one of your model-driven apps, so let's say you're in your Sales Hub, you have this option now to say edit and preview. And when you say edit and preview, it's going to load your application and of course all of the tables that the application uses. And if you go here, you'll see this option on particular table, excuse me, that says edit command bar. So this is a new I didn't know I changed anything, but excuse me. It will basically allow you to edit the command bar for a particular table, just like the ribbon workbench does. And here you're going to say which command bar you want to edit. So of course you have your main grid, which is your listing of records. And then you have your main form, which is the when you open a record, and that's the red bar at the top on the record. So that would be here, right? So we'll, if you go in here, you'll see the difference. So here, this gives you a nicer interface. If you wanted to create a new command or a new button, it's called a command. You just say new command, and that will create the button. You can move it around just like you can in the ribbon workbench. You get to use an icon if you want, so you can use some of the existing icons in the system. There's a lot of them in here. They've been probably used for other buttons, but you could pick the one that's most apropos to what you're doing. And then you can, of course, give it a label. And here is where the actual run action is. And so here you have there's a new way to run commands in Dynamics, and it's called PowerFX, and so they're formulas, kind of like, think of them like Excel formulas. And we don't have time to go into that today, but if you want to do some research on your own, it's called PowerFX, and so you can do a lot of powerful things with these formulas, update records and so on and so forth. So, but the point is, you can edit the command bar here using a formula, or you can still use JavaScript. So you can run JavaScript by calling a JavaScript library here, and you can also do a show hide formula as well, and that would be here. So you would do on a condition, and then you can create a condition here to make your visibility on your button. So it's very much the same, but I think it's a lot easier to do it here. Just a new option. So that's in the Power make.powerapps.com. That's in the Power Apps administration portal. Okay, so also the record count thing we were talking about before. If you want to get record counts, there's a new extension now. It's called Dynamics Counter, and I think it's only for Chrome. So I have it here in Chrome. You can get the total record count just like we did for a count before. You can just type the table that you want. It'll give you the count. So that's a kind of a faster, quicker way to do it. But if you wanted to get the count for multiple things, I would say use the XRM Toolbox option. Okay, so that's some of the tools. The tools that I've used in the toolbox, and also in Power Platform. Of course, you have in Power Platform, you can do all your forms editing and all of that stuff now too. And that's a good way to do that. You can, if you're used to Classic, Classic's nice, but I think the Power Platform way is much better. I'll give you some tips on managing solutions and development. So these are just tips that I've developed over the years, or things that have helped me kind of got me out of bad situations. So I thought I would share them with you. The first one is how to logically set up your solution. So this is always a kind of argument about how to do this, or the best way to do it. And I found the best way to divide up solutions is by tables or logical units at work. Some people use sprint numbers or release feature names, or iteration names, or numbers or something like that. And what I find is when you do that, you have a lot of the same things in different solutions. And so you're never really sure what's in those solutions, right? So what was in sprint number 20 or what was in this, particular release. If you create your solutions, by your table names like accounts or quotes or a custom table that you've created, then it's very easy for your devs to know where to go to work on that thing. So if you're saying we need to change to account, I go to the account solution. It's okay if you have, project solutions that, if you're doing a particular project and you want a solution for that project and that, has a couple of things, as long as there's not a lot of cross dependencies, then, that's fine. That's just the preferred method that I use. I also like to create a separate solution for my workflows and Power Automate flows. I find that, again, that's an easy way to know, okay, I need to change this workflow or I need to change this Power Automate flow. Where should I go? And so if you create a solution just for those, it's very easy to know where to go. And plus they have cross table boundaries. So, they're not, a lot of times if it's a flow that works with accounts, but it also does something with quotes, it's like, well, do I put it in the quotes or do I put it in the accounts? Just put it in a separate solution. And also managing Power Automate flows with solutions is also a best practice. So you probably should do that. If you're using managed solutions in your test in UAT and prod, then I always like to have a deployment fix solution, which is unmanaged, to resolve merging issues with the managed solutions. So if you've used managed solutions, what will happen is if you have the same thing in a couple of different managed solutions, say a field on a form, it'll try to merge for you, and it may end up putting your field where you didn't want it. It wasn't in either the places you had it in your solution. So I find having a unmanaged solution, you can go in and fix that, just that one thing that didn't come out right on your managed solution, because the unmanaged layer is, of course, at the top, so it's going to override whatever your managed solution tried to merge or do for you. Don't ever use the default solution. I think everyone's probably said this to you before. It's just not a good idea to make any changes in the default solution. Another option is you could remove the managed layer that's causing your problem, but again, that's probably, in my opinion, a lot harder than just fixing it with fixing an unmanaged layer in a fixed solution. So that's if you're copying security roles or you've created custom roles, migrate them up through solutions. Don't recreate them in each environment, and the reason is because this will create new GUIDs, and you'll get a lot of issues where it'll say I already have this role here, but it doesn't match, and so it's just best to create it in your dev environment and then promote it up just like you do everything else in a solution, and then the GUIDs will match and everything will be just fine. Never use the same name for anything. So this is kind of one of those rules that I found to be useful, because what will happen inevitably is you will create something for a POC, or you'll create something and you'll name it whatever, and then you'll turn around and say, you know what, I don't want that. I want to do something else. And so you'll, in your dev environment, you'll delete that and you'll create something new with the same name. And then when, if it's been deployed up, you're going to run into this issue where it's going to say, I already have something with this name, but it's a different type, and it becomes a real headache to try to get around that and get to undo all of that mess. So my advice is always use a different name. Then you will never have that issue. And whether it's just, even if you're doing another iteration of something, just put, v.1 or v1 or new or whatever at the end of your your name, because we, in Dynamics, they use that name as a, unique identifier. So it can really cause you a lot of problems if you use the same name on two different things. Another tip is use your version numbers diligently. So this is the best way to track what you have where in what environments. Every time you promote up another version of a solution, just version the number like you're supposed to, and you'll be fine. You'll know exactly what you have and where you're at on your environments. If you have in-flight development going on a particular, let's say like on your account solution, and there's something that's not ready to go up and there's a hot fix needed, just do a solution patch. So that's a good way to just put the one thing that you need to change in that patch and promote that up. And then later when your other changes are ready, you can clone your solution and roll those together, and it'll increment your version number for you. And it's just a very clean way to manage the hot fixes that you need to go up. Another tip is environment issues in general. I think this is a big headache in Dynamics customer engagement. So we have these GUIDs that will change between environments for some of our reference data. And if you've worked with Dynamics very long, you know that these records, if they're referenced in a business rule or a workflow, will be set to either inactive or deactivate, or the workflow will be in a draft status, because when you move it up, it's trying to look up a record it can't find. So it will cause you some headaches. The best way to mitigate that is to use the data migration utility when possible. So if it's a reference type records like sales territories or something, use the data migration utility. If you've never used it before, it's in the SDK. It's available. I always like to show where it is because I always had trouble. So if you download the SDK, it's inside the SDK, and it's called the configuration migration. And it's a pretty simple tool to use. You just create a schema of what it is you're exporting, export it, and then import it into the next environment. This will get you around, the GUIDs will match, and you won't have that issue. The other one is use environment variables for URLs and keys and secrets. So, obviously, as you move up an environment, an API call or a URL may be different for that in particular environment. Use an environment variable. That way, it's easy for you to just reference the variable and then be able to just update the URL in the next environment, not have to go into your JavaScript and change your code, or hard-coded values. We all know that's bad. So use environment variable. Another tip that I have. So that's some of the other things that I like to do with deployments is create a checklist. So whenever you're deploying your solutions, as you deploy them, you'll find the things that you need to check over and over again. And so create a checklist, kind of like pilots use or whatever, and check your workflows or check your Power Automate flows, or remember to check your business rules to make sure those are activated. Reset connections on Power Automate flows. Maybe that's something that you've you need to do. Although if you use connection references, you won't have to worry about that so much. So that's another tip: use a connection reference instead of a hard-coded connection on a Power Automate. So just create a checklist, then that way, it helps you. You don't have to remember to do everything each time you do it. Okay, so I think towards the next section here, we're going to talk about some browser extensions that I like to use for customer engagement. And so these are the ones that I mainly have used. PowerPane, and that's for Chrome only. Then we'll look at level up, and I think I showed you dynamics counter already. And then we'll look at this JS fiddle, which is pretty cool if you're working with JavaScript. So the first one is Power Pane, which is a Chrome extension, and I've used it for a long time. And basically, a lot of these extensions will do the same types of things. So, if you need to know, like, entity info, like the object type code, you need that in the application. You can easily get it with this. You can get the record URL. If you need to copy the record ID, you're working with, doing some development. It's very easy, to use these extensions to get your record ID of the one that you're testing. If you need to show all your hidden fields, you can show all your hidden fields. You can do dangerous things like unlock your locked fields. So this is the time when I will say I don't share these tools or these extensions with my end users. I tend to only share them with developers and other admins because there are ways for them to get around some of the application rules that you've put in the application for obvious reasons. So we don't want them to, unlock fields that they're not supposed to be, have access to. So you can show your schema names, if you're looking for the backend name. So that extension is very useful. I've used it a lot. In quick, if I want to see option set values, it will show you the numbers, the values that go along with your option sets. Another one that's kind of the same, does the same type of things, is called Level Up. It will do a lot of the things, like I said. It'll show you the logical names if you want to see the backend logical names. It just does it in a different way. It has a feature to blur the fields. So if you're doing a screenshot for something and you don't want some of your sensitive information, you can blur your fields. That's a nice one. I use this one a lot. This one Level Up has, and I don't think the other one has it. It's showing me all of the business rules and processes running on this particular record. So it even lets you open it. If you click on it, it'll open the business rule editor, which might take a while, but so it's pretty good, pretty useful tool there inside of the Level Up. Wait for that to load. One of the things that this one really has that's really a great feature is for impersonation. So if you're trying to figure out a role issue and you need to see what the user's saying or impersonate and see what the user's saying when they're saying, well, hey, I don't have access to this field, and you look at the role and you're like, well, you should, you can go and impersonate them. So you select the user and then you just click this impersonate button and it will switch your screen and you're impersonating them, and so it's very useful. The only warning I have there is once you do this, if you want to go back to being yourself, you might have to clear a cache or open a new browser or something, because it tends to want to hang on to the impersonated person for a while. So it's probably caching it or something. So it's cookies. So I just would, close out of everything and open a new session. You should be fine. So that's a very useful one I've used to troubleshoot roles issues. So yeah, so this is another tool, and it does a lot of the same things that Power Pane does, but it's just a different way of doing it. I said I would show you the metadata browser extension, and this is it. If you want to browse the metadata like you can in the toolbox, you can load this extension and it will allow you to look at the metadata. And so you can type the table or the entity that you're looking for, select it. It's going to give you all the properties in kind of a different format. I like it because you can filter. So all your attributes, all your columns. You can filter if you're looking for something or you're looking for a particular type. You can filter the rows just like you could in Excel. It'll show you all your relationships. And this is the one that I really like. You can see all the option sets, and the values in one place. So a lot of times, I'm trying to figure out, the values or what the backend values are and something. And so I come here a lot to look at my option sets. And you can even go, I think you can even look at your global option sets here. So it'll even load those up for you. So I just like this this particular tool much better than the traditional one in the toolbox. So that's the metadata browser. And the other one we have is the final tool I wanted to show you is this JavaScript fiddle. So if you're working with JavaScript and you're trying to figure out or developing it, trying to figure out what it's going to do, you can actually run the JavaScript real-time live, here, and it's going to, let's pick something it's going to actually do. Like get the record going. If you're doing JavaScript to get the record going, you want to make sure that your JavaScript works. You can put it in the fiddle and then run it, and it will show you real time what's going on. You can save new records here, so you can give something a name and and save it off, and then save it and rerun it over and over again. So it's a really fast way to develop JavaScript on the fly before you, because we all know, I don't know if you know, but the JavaScript editor in Dynamics is really horrible. So you're usually developing outside of that, and then when you're done, you kind of paste that into the web resource and publish it. But this is a fast way to do it if you don't want to use an external IDE where you don't know exactly what the JavaScript's going to do. There's another tool in Edge. It's a newer one. I haven't used that much. It's called GotDivs, which is basically, again, it does a lot of the same things. It unlocks fields, shows you hidden fields, navigates to records. A lot of the same things that the other ones do. Any of these extensions that you want to find, the easiest way to find them is to just go and type Dynamics in the if you just type Dynamics here, you'll see you'll get most of them. This is in Edge, but if you did the same thing in Chrome, you'll get most of the ones that I've shown today. So that's really the browser extensions, or the browser tricks that we like to say, and they're not really tricks. They're just a different way of figuring things out. And yeah, so those are some of the things that I use on a daily basis to kind of help myself get through the day. And just any questions or anything that you want me to go over in a little more depth if I went too fast for you? But Ryan, did we? Okay.
Doesn't look like there's anything coming through here, so.
Okay, well, appreciate everybody taking time out of their Thursday today. If you want to reach out to me, there's my email address. If you have a question about something that you saw today, or if you just have a question that's something that you need help with, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. It's a community effort. So yeah, thanks for attending today.